Woomba 30 degrees, as is Bundy, and 32 in Gympie. So we're not seeing a big temperature range in our listening area today, unless, of course, you're indoors like us. Sheridan with you this afternoon. My next guest, a man with a 10-year plan and a buddy, a 10-year plan to tackle the toughest ultra marathons in the world, a task he's calling Warua. He's just ticked one off his list. Jamie Milne in the studio with filmmaker Nick Andrew. Thanks for coming back in, guys.
Oh, thank you very much for having us,
Awesome
Sheridan.
to be back, thanks.
Yeah, and you've arrived back in. You both look, incredibly fresh. Jamie, you've just got back in from Hawaii. You did the Hurt 100. I kept calling it the Pain.
Same.
Jamie's doing the Pain. Everyone's looking at me like I'm mad. The Hurt 100. So for those who missed our chat last year, do you want to just bring everyone up to date?
Yeah. Oh, actually, Nick, you're pretty good.
Yeah, you've been the man behind the camera, capturing all of
Let's
this.
tell the story then. So a few months ago, Jamie approached us and said, I've got a new crazy scheme. Let's go forward with it. And he said,
Brave and
I want to
crazy.
do the 10 toughest ultra marathons on Earth over the next 10 years, one a year from my 40th birthday to my 50th birthday. And I said, that's a great story. Let's document it and let's explain what's going on inside your mind. And let's build a story so that other people can see how you overcome challenges, how you break your own physical and mental barriers so that they can find their own motivation inside their lives. So that's the point of the story. And Jamie's just got to do all the hard work over that 10 years.
Wow, he's got the elevator pitch down
Oh,
pat. You can
he's-
come on the radio anytime. Very
polished.
succinct. So tell us about the Hurt 100. Did it live up to its name? Was it as tough as you imagined?
Sheridan, it was far beyond what I had ever expected, which has now left me
Petrified. One down, nine
petrified,
to go.
expectations violated, and yeah, like it reached far beyond anything I ever imagined, and which has also left me thinking, oh God, so what does that mean that I can do now if I've done that type thing? And I don't say that lightly or egotistically. It was absolutely brutal, but rewarding and empowering as well, if that makes sense.
I want to talk a moment about the empowering part of that, but first, tell us how many competitors took part, how many were there at the beginning, and how many actually made it to the end of the challenge?
Oh, it was a very generous drop-off rate, and some of the injuries and reasons people withdrew were substantial and warranted, and everything from heart attack to broken.
Oh.
Yeah, which was a bit full on actually, but I mean that does a lot of these endurance events that in terms of our cardiorespiratory system, they do get challenged, and it is unfortunately a rare byproduct. But yeah, broken limbs, there were kidneys going and all sorts of stuff, and multiple breaks and people just also breaking psychologically. We started with 132, like something like that.
132, 134, something around that.
Yeah, and I think there was only 60 something left.
Wow, so just making it to the end, you're a winner.
Literally,
Yeah.
like it
Hashtag winner.
Yeah, it was survival. It wasn't, and I'm so glad I swiped myself off the pedestal. Initially, I was like, oh, top 10 would be amazing. That crazy little fantasy that you have, and then
I could win this thing.
yeah, I've actually got this thing. 40 and fit and fabulous. I'm all over this, and then you get closer, and it's like, actually, no, I'm not. I'll just like to survive. That'd be great.
So in filmmaking terms, Nick, the stakes here were pretty high. You must have captured some pretty dramatic moments. Were other competitors willing to let you film them, or was it predominantly focused on Jamie?
It's an amazing community inside that race, and they use the term ohana, which means family in Hawaiian. And so they were very receptive to us being there, and they understood what we were doing. So I think a little bit of it was they were receptive, and then by about the 100th kilometre, people just didn't care what we were doing. We were just a byproduct inside their world, so they were just sort of ignoring us because they had bigger fish to fry, for want of a better term. They had another hill to climb and another mountain to conquer. So people were really good, and then I think they just genuinely didn't care what we were doing. But we were primarily focused on capturing Jamie and what was happening in his world, but it was also very important to see how other people were interacting, and it was really, really remarkable to see the life draining out of people sort of at that halfway mark, and seeing vacant.
You could get that just following me
looked-
for a jog around the block. It goes pretty
You'll
quickly.
get it from me as well. But to see these
currently doing it.
incredibly fit and motivated people with such
Yes.
amazing goals
Fading.
get to that point, and you could see the life literally draining out of their eyes, and you could see their bodies atrophying in front of you. They were just eating themselves up because they were exerting so much. It was really quite an incredible thing to see.
So talk us through the Hurt 100, Jamie. Like what did you do in the beginning? What challenges were there physically? And then we'll get to the emotional and psychological resilience.
Oh, the mental and physical fortitude of this guy. No, look, I think from a personal perspective, I felt really good about the whole thing. I mean, you've always
What, you
got,
run, you climb, you
yeah,
swim.
you sort of get that luxury of hindsight, and you look back, and yes, there is possibly one thing I may have changed, but with the multi-layered approach we had to this, we've got university ethically approved research that's gone into this.
Ethically approved.
Yeah. And then obviously Nick and his team and their time, like making a documentary of a guy that didn't get the run finished would have been a tough ask to try and make that a really cool story. So
Especially your first in 10 years.
oh god,
Yeah.
and I kept
So
thinking,
you just knew you had to get there.
I just had to survive, and I just had to get it done. So we left no stone unturned. I missed my 40th in terms of celebrations. Two children's birthdays that I didn't, overly celebrate. I've just been living off bloody kale and almonds and cashew nuts.
Lucky that they're young enough to forget that.
Yeah. So I've been plant powered for 13 weeks, and missed Christmas, missed New Year's. Not a drop of alcohol for so. It sounds a little woe as me, but
No, I haven't done alcohol for 18 months.
oh wow,
Top that sunshine.
Jesus, I'll just come and sit back in my chair, shall I? So there's no stone unturned, and then you really get to know a lot about yourself, because I knew, win, draw, lose, survive, fail, whatever. As long as I do my best during this time, then. Yeah, I say that, but I did have to finish. I felt like I had to finish, but it was good.
Was there a moment where you really questioned whether you'd be able to go on? Can you describe where you were? Was it muddy? Was it hot? Paint a picture for us.
Oh God!
Or throw back to Nick. He
Well,
can
here
probably
it
describe
goes, and it's in. And I'll borrow this from Nick. We've talked about it recently. It's just come to light as he's been going through the editing. So I thought to myself, I made a bit of a rookie mistake. I've done a bit of sleep deprivation stuff with the military, and I kind of thought, I'd done 3 laps, which is about 100 kilometres, and it was really tough. But I had a bit more there. But going in survival mode, I thought what would be a really good idea, because by this stage I actually had lost all my toenails, so all 10 toenails. I got the royal flush. So if you've seen the movie The Hobbit, my feet kind of.
You got little hobbit feet.
Oh, that dude, probably more
But
our
are
era.
your toes hypersensitive? Because toenail, if anyone's ever lost a nail, the skin underneath is super sensitive.
And I'm a bit of a princess at the best of times, so now I'm conflicted. No pedicures, no. I look like that little dude off the Labyrinth. Remember that? That's more my era. The Labyrinth, the guy, the little dude, whatever his name is, with those bad feet. That's
I
what
love
my
that
feet.
film though.
Yeah, so that's my feet, and so I kind of thought, and I had fallen over, I'd hit the back of my head on a rock, and when a guy does that, a guy
Did
that
you
can
cry?
might have wept, but when a guy considers himself a bit of an alpha male, it always happens in front of a lot of hot chicks. So there was like 3 or 4 of these ultra marathon
It's like
women.
This beautiful.
It totally was though.
Wahine.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm joking, but I'm serious. There was 3 of them, and I totally did it in front of them. I slipped up, fell on my back, cracked my head, and I thought to myself, "Oh, okay, this is actually when I'm going to go unconscious. This is what happens when you get knocked out." I don't think I did. However, I was more hurt by
the emotional sting.
I was more hurt by the tears
The
that they
burn.
saw.
The
Are you
emotional
crying?
burn.
Yeah. So when I got through the end of the 3rd lap, the team were there. Nick and his doco team were there. The medical team were there, and I thought I'll just take a quick 15-minute sleep. That seems like the right thing to do, because I'd been going for 18 hours, done 100 Ks, and I thought, and then I'll come out and I'll rip into the last 2 laps. And so they went to work repairing my back from the fall and from the friction burn, sneaky medical pedicure, all the rest. Bit of a rub down, bit of a cuddle, wiped the tears, told them about the three damsels, and and I didn't actually realise, but I passed out. And
Wow.
then opened my eyes 15 minutes later, and Nick described it to me like I was the Walking Dead. He said there's a moment on the camera where, and I don't remember, and they all sort of watched and thought, he's not right. He's actually probably still asleep.
So that must have been pretty scary to watch, someone who's become a firm friend, let alone the subject of your 10-year project, look like he might be about to,
Yeah.
shoof
yeah.
off.
Well, I was fairly confident he was staying with us. I just wasn't sure that mentally he was with us. I've seen it a lot in my time in the military when people just reach that point, but it really was a body there with just blank, soulless eyes. Really, the exhaustion had set in. That short sleep had really knocked him around. He was in sleep inertia as well. His body was confused. But it was at that moment that I realised just how taxing this race was on someone who has such experience in ultra running and pushing themselves. To see that completely vacant look, I was like, okay, these next 2 laps are going to be really, really hard work for Jamie. So,
Where are you posting sneak peeks of the doco,
Oh,
or aren't you?
we're not releasing too much because there's a lot of the footage really describes what was happening. We'll be putting some stuff out on the Wairua social pages, so their Facebook and Instagram. That's Wairua Spirit on Facebook and Insta. But really, we're going to keep a lot of the footage under wraps because it really shows the trauma that Jamie was going through and how he was sort of fighting through it.
So, Jamie, how do you feel about the next 9 years? What's
I'm
next?
on a running sabbatical hiatus. No more running for a bit.
Grow those toenails back.
Oh my lord, it's really quite ugly. It's really quite unfortunate. So, and I thought I had semi-decent feet, but now I'm, not so
Gone.
sure. I'm not so sure.
We can throw a little bit of that footage out if you like. We've got some of his feet.
Oh,
if
I
that's
don't
your
know.
thing.
That's going to put off anybody who's
Yeah.
even thinking about doing
My
these crazy
lord.
marathons. So, what's next on the agenda?
Oh, it's funny you should. It's funny you should ask that. I know this sounds terrible, but I sent a message to Nick's fiance. She's part of the team, and I just had to check when her birthday was. Last year, last year I had a crack at the Guinness World Records, most amount of strict pull-ups in 24 hours, of which I failed last year miserably. But I had a crack. But I can't let it go, so I contacted Guinness.
When are you doing it?
August 10th.
Okay, we'll be there. We will be there. The ABC will broadcast this incredible event. And then the next of the ultra marathons is next year in Tennessee. Have I got that one right?
We're going to do our very best. So a lot of it gets handed over to these guys in terms of the good thing now is that because of the surviving of the Hurt 100 and in that sort of top tier group, I now have earned the eligibility athletically, which makes me feel good for a 40-year-old bloke. And I can't sort of get in riding Nick's coattails going, we've got this great documentary crew, it'd be really good for your event too. So we've got a good case, so we can get into some of these bigger events, which are really difficult, not only financially,
Fantastic.
but they make it hard.
I've been thinking of what song to play next.
Ooh.
It's got to be this one, doesn't it? Doesn't it?
does.
Marathon Man. Come back to that in a moment. No, I'll probably play something else, but then I'll get, you planted the earworm. Why didn't you play the whole song? Just give us a quick reminder of your Facebook, your Insta, where we can find you. And guys, it'll be great to have you back in the studio in the not too distant future.
No, Sheridan, you're awesome. It's Wairua Spirit on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a website as well. And again, if anybody's out there and they feel like they're struggling and they're very uncomfortable with life in general, I feel and Nick feels there's a lot of great tools and learnings and strategies that has come out of this journey. Yes, it is related to running, but running's just a vessel.
Okay.
Have a little look.
Let's talk about that in our February catch-up, shall we?
Love it.
Jamie
Thanks, Sharon.
Milne, Nick, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And a big thank you to James Tao for holding on there. Hey, JT, how are you? JT.
Hello, Sheridan. It feels like it's been a very long time.
It has
since we
been.
last
Happy
spoke,
New
so
Year. I know.
Happy New Year.
We'll sneak that in because tomorrow it's going to be February.
It feels a bit weird saying it at the very end of January, but it's still very heartfelt nonetheless.
Likewise, my friend. How has the market wrapped up today?
Yeah, look, the markets today, not the best day. We had a very strong lead in from Wall Street, where US markets